In the 70s, Bowie does something that mystics like Karen Armstrong, John Shelby Spong, the Episcopalian Bishop, well, he just humbly and automatically during the... I mean, you see a lot of interviews where he's constantly being questioned, and he's constantly saying that Ziggy Stardust is a chameleon, artistic character. But what I think he was is perhaps humble to a fault, and maybe didn't keep to mind was art and religion's perennial inability to see eye to eye, and so focus on people and art and hearts. His words in the interview with Russell Hardy, he says, in response to the question, do you believe in God? He says, I believe in an energy form, but I wouldn't like to put a name to it. In response to the question, do you indulge in any form of worship? He says, life, I love life very much indeed. And so it's this idea, it leads to us assessing sort of the marketplace of ideas and eliminating. From the approach of an eliminator who's going, well, I'm minusing that, I'm questioning this, I'm liking this, and there's also the matter of anthropomorphic. If you think about it, an anthropomorphic God is invented after man, always, and as language is invented by man. Anything conveyable in terms of language is also a construct conceptually created by man. But when you see like the hobo, the beggar, who's angry because he missed the bus, in pursuit of which he stubs his toe on a rock on the ground, and he just keeps yelling, you stupid fucking rock hack, you fucked up my bus trip, you fucking stupid fucking rock, fuck you, you fucking cunt. And that is the anthropomorphization of that rock, which has no brain, nervous system, consciousness. But when you think about it, if at any point in time human attributes and human traits are to be permitted into a definition of God, it's a bit like a corporate takeover and consolidation in the war of between businesses, where because you can only do it using the conceptual resources of people you have known in the past. I don't think it's as simplistic as Freud says, where God is about your daddy. God is said to have all these powers beyond the limits that limit mankind. Now, by definition, therefore, we can't know those. So why do we then have books upon books and sermons upon sermons that delve into the nuances and why you need to go to such and such a church because they happen to know about things that they don't have the ability to? And this is where I don't think religion belongs in a Human Rights Act, going a little deeper than how you don't have a religion saying anything but the way in which you are not human, and therefore contradicting its rightful place in the Human Rights Act in principle. If dogs had a church, the RSPCA could have motion for, in regards to rules concerning cruelty towards animals and the prevention thereof. They could bring in, let all dogs bark and poop and sniff each other's butts in this church building. Down the street from me now is that they have a Latter-day Saints moron church. And so what I think about, I originally had thought of God in monotheistic sense, that has ideas like God is timeless, does not change, and that contradicts that he incarnates as a human, and the purpose of the sacrifice, the sacrificial, which I've already argued is a part of a cover-up of the original Gospel of Mark. In Mark, you have that it could only have been the Jews being a conquered people. You don't then dispatch a monarch cop to say, are you... I mean, for instance, when I worked for 9 years in pharmacy, I was taught that those put on the Mental Health Act are surveyed all at various times and by various means, and as we laughed at them, and I was taught more or less to laugh, scoff, and somehow better than them, in a way that it was not described properly during work shifts, but could only be excused by some sort of religious appeal to egoism, or else the charter on a stuffed constitution would bridge this anomaly. Now, so it's also it's a wedge to think in terms of creating yourself, and that's another thing about Bowie, is that he's the god of self-reinvention. But there isn't even an approach to self-reinvention if you've decided that you have no idea of yourself, surrendering to a god and asking a god you've invented out of concepts of your community surroundings and babble and the chatter, and for every single neural pathway that God has spoken through or to you, there's a source trace to a stimuli that you've forgotten but nonetheless impressed you on some level, and you just had to come to terms with it. But what actually would have impeded on the briskness of that process is it was conceiving the existence of the deity himself, because he's not there. But nor is it true now that we have to say or speak of God as someone to believe in. That's a human problem, and an interpersonal problem. We even had it at my old church. We were segmented into groups called Xerox and Reflex. Now, one was named Xerox after the photocopier and reflex up to the A4 paper that went into the photocopier. It was the teen to adult group, and then the kids group. Reflex with the kids group, so they're named after blank paper, and Xerox was the photocopier machine. And so, what's evident in both is that there's nothing. It's like a dry spell. There's nothing attempted in terms of innovation. There's a yield that God somehow facilitate change on your behalf. When God is only a person you've made out of the ghosts of past, present relationships. When you go beyond the textual, because we always find, and there's a whole chunk in atheism and I believe that the field can be expanded until we take every transhuman trait and explain how and why in human terms. Because agnosticism meant to admit and go, well, no, this is beyond our limits. It's like if you get asked, are you a theist, an atheist, or an agnostic? And you're told agnostic is like just saying that you don't know, I don't know. I don't know doesn't answer or address the question of whether you believe or not. And I've said, Maimonides was a Jewish sage who said that in his day he said that though I have my belief and faith in God, I submit that it does not constitute knowledge. So he was what you would call a theist agnostic. And then you have those who would say, I have no faith in God, and I also think that God can never be any substantive true knowledge. And that's the atheist agnostic. So the agnostic is actually more frontier assertive in terms of what knowledge is about, than just merely this is one either or scenario that is true, because you're either a theist or an atheist, and take all the religions that don't mutually coexist. So let's say there are 1,000. If you become a believer in one of them, you've got 999 other religions that not only consider you estranged, you're not a wanderer on search for a religion from their perspective. You've sided one side against 999 in their mind, and there's more world religions than 1,000. I was just be parsimonious for example's sake. So it's a little Gaia, the way I think of it, this energy. Language is used for the pious to take succor out of the confusion of those that aren't, or those that sort of sleight hand appeased by or intrigued by this or that religion. But because they are going out of their minds and can be quite intrusive to their approach of us, to say, we've got this to offer you, and you're precious to a Lord who said that you need 50 shekels of silver, and if you rape a virgin, buy her with the shekels, and there's your wife. And this God thinks that you're quite precious, in fact. The shekel is no longer in circulation. It's sunk into the underworld of stocks and bonds. And so something saying it's not a God that is like a title you. That's why I love Bowie saying I wouldn't like to put a name to it. It wasn't for being for sake of trying to be misdirective. He was being wary. In fact, so wary that I think he just chose to make albums rather than keep going. Well, let's like try and unilateralize, reduce, be reductive, and sum up this phenomenology. But I think it's expansive. So language is an inefficient tool, something a mystic like Spong would say for describing God. And there's also George Smith talked of three kinds of knowledge. There's like a knowledge by acquaintance, which can be like anything from gossip to partial comprehension of articles or of knowledge. Propositional knowledge, which is direct knowledge expressed in direct literal propositions, and knowledge by experience. One example that's effective is that you could read as many books as you could find on how to ride a single person push bike, but you won't have knowledge by experience of how to ride a bike until you do it, until you practice it, and you can have that knowledge by experience without having to acquaint yourself beforehand with some, if any, propositional knowledge. It could just be a chat, or you could just self-teach, discover. So God, I think, dwells more on the experiential. God, I think, God is to be regarded in the present and future, but never a source to obscure us from the other types of knowledge, but rather to safeguard the experiential phenomenology from being corrupted by being defined through the other types of knowledge, such as by acquaintance or propositional. So that's why I think we have to admit as a planet that worldwide, religious-wise, there's too much that goes through people's heads as religious experience is sought for and attained in drips and drabs. Perhaps there's too much pasteurization and pastoral care spliced in the mix. You get a glimpse of something. But there's too much going on to say that it is altogether and completely wrong. But I think that can be said about messianic monotheistic religion. And that's why I like the term "odd bless you." I've oscillated between using the word God in various contexts, spelling it with a lowercase d, or spelling God backwards as dog, or is you created in the image of dog. But the truth of how I perceive what I really think about the topic, it's sort of like if it's sort of like the history of money, something that gets taken for granted, not thought about. People didn't want a wheelbarrow, gold bricks from one land space to another. So they would make promissory notes, notes saying redeemable in gold. Originally, the dollar bills would say redeemable in gold, so they were backed by gold. Today they just call it legal tender, which is some way, I suppose, caution you about maybe Elvis and his drug use and whether he loved you tender, or whether Tinder was going to lead to the invention of Kinder for for sexy kids. And in other words, is backed by questionable relevance at the very least, but and yet is said to make the world go round more than gravity. So there's more of what I would call God in people, I think, before they get into religions, and they discover that the journey involved their in becoming in tune with what they always, what each of us always has been and is. If there's one truth to this machina of the, as I estimate the person to have nearly converted me to now sort of say, before saying the truth, she'll say, yeah, I led him to this and that. No, you fucking did not. You'll say it to my face. Is that there are a liberty of a range and scope of philosophic inspirational sources for you or anyone in life, already well available. We've Groundhog Dayed it a bit in the past half of the last 4,000 years, so that already shows a curve of like a learning curve that got better after it met halfway, approximately, is suggested by the birth of the human Jesus. So when is it accosted in Mark chapter 12? It's, are you the king of the Jews? When are you the slave of the slaves? Would have been a better question. What you need to realize is if you've conquered a bunch of people, you don't have they're already too constricted in terms of the social freedom. And plus, they're not running an independent monarchy. There's no duke or duchess or prince, princess, or king or queen of Jews. So the officer of happens with a lot of police accostings to this day. Come up to you like last night for me. You're not a super villain. This cop says, I was dressed. Heath Ledger's performance, and I've always been convinced that he was way too hard on himself, because he beat Jack Nicholson's Joker, but you know, it quietly came through in quotational statements that he was really self. I think the that aspect of just like the moving film that is always heartwarming. It's a genre of film, but it's not all of film. But even in the most disturbing types of film, and The Dark Knight isn't one of those. It's just very well done. A very, very, very excellent and outstanding performance of the Joker. To me, it made me think, like, you go, these fundamental four rights to existence, life, movement, health, and expression. And you ask yourself, how constantly do I get by preserving that right in principle for me and anyone else? Then, like, the Joker's role inspired me to think about attorney, and the importance of which in Australia is lacking, because cops will use force too often when they need to have warrants to even lay a finger on you. They'll take you into their humble abodes, where instead of getting you to walk through a pain that has the airport grade technology for scanning your person, instead they've got Bibles, and they're frisking. So and people have made custom to that. But what I think is harsh and wrong about this practice is that the technology exists in order to determine, and they're stupid, because like even after they've frisked you and put you in a cell for a night stay, they'll just frisk you again in the next morning, when all you've had is the blankets, the shitty excuse for blankets that they've given you. Most of which, half of which you have to fashion pillows out of, by bunching them up. Now, how in that cell, but by telekinesis, are you fucking Magneto? What are you doing that requires this frisking? Like, why can't they have like Qantas airplane boarding, walk-through pains, where your person is scanned for the possession of any personal effects that would be deemed dangerous. And furthermore, that because they're Christian, they've got this equation amounting to how to make a save, which is like, Clint's crazy bargains, warehouse sale, crazy savings, math savings, Christmas mass, mass suicide. And if Jesus is asked in the original transcript, "Are you the king of the Jews?" then as a conquered individual, he wouldn't have comprehended he would have been thinking, well, what constitutes a reply to this? is this guy joking? Is this and even then he says, well, he said it, not well, you asked me, and no, I'm not the king of the Jews. Well, yes, I am the king of the Jews. In the later Gospels are the cover-ups, the threefold cover-ups, Matthew, Luke, and John. And bear in mind that in Genesis you're left with, a three-person sexually sick situation, where it's up to Adam, Eve, and their son Cain. I'm not sure he was the first son. He kills his brother Abel, who was one of two. So he's now a psychopath, murderer of his own brother. And they're out to populate the earth. It's left three people, Adam, Eve, and Cain. So either way you go about it, it's sexually sick. Did Adam just have more children with Eve? Did Cain become the first motherfucker and have babies with his mom? Either way, their children had to have had children with each other in this story, if it's believable. So either way you go about it, it's like pedophilic, fostering, sexually sick literature. And what does correspond to is taking this original gospel, Mark's gospel, and corrupting it with a threefold cover-up that you should believe in the supernaturalism of Matthew, Luke, and John's content. Because you notice what the shift is that Jesus takes on all liabilities to this charge, to the point where he's going, yeah, I'm the king of the Jews, and then is whinging and spouting out contradictory last words while on the cross, going, I'm God incarnate, and I'm king of the Jews. And what you see is a kingdom, like essentially affecting a murder-suicide. And it shocked the people, like more than the slow poke raising of the hoisting of the flag for Diana. So the people, even a rape boner is like a reaction from following a rape, and it's like you have dick pain. But they can occur. They're not something not to ever exist. So that Jesus is getting butchered on the cross, and in his dying moments is thinking of those he loves and the woman that he loves most, and is what momentarily gains an erection while being murdered. And even though, it disgusts those that are crucifying him, to the point that they put a loincloth on him, but that loincloth leaves an anomaly, because everything you see pictographically on the crucifix depicted is Jesus shamed. The nails are his shame. The crown of thorns is his shame. The Inri, behold the King of the Jews, as you know, mockery. Why was it mockery unless the title was false? If the title was false, it couldn't be a valid accusatory question, commensurate to or pursuant to an execution. And Jesus is more found to be using like a poetic metaphor of the Son of Man, and in talking parables, than he is to be a God botherer in the Gospel of Mark as well. So it's it shows that these ancient kingdoms were polytheists. See, they thought they were chosen by the gods with pure blood to rule, and they were inbreeders. But to consolidate and national anthems and bringing the people together to send you a message that's about people. they retain a sense of there being numerous gods, while depriving the people of various ways to describe things in their day through monotheism, which is the doctrine of one God. Now, it's like marshalling all your attention, Andre, all your attention to this person speaking from the kingdom. Is what would have had the utilitarian function of at the time. Because the commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me, wouldn't have been a stated commandment in Mosaic law, unless gods were being used to describe everything from a flood to a fire to a flood to a tornado to a fertilization to a harvest. The gods for. That's why I think when he reads from these commandments, and it's obviously the one about not having other gods that has this, leads to this golden bull calf hugging. And when you think about it, if you had a bunch of slaves who are undereducated, if educated at all, and that they need this language of God of, God of affection, God of they would have been barely descriptive whatsoever. So Moses suddenly can appear to be the bad guy, instilling panic and terror in the minds of those he was claiming to have been freeing, just by telling them to turf all of that religion for a man in the clouds throwing lightning bolts. So anyway, I'm more of a pacifist than an idealist, and that's why I'm not prescriptive. I don't advise others to be like me in terms of ideology, but perusing ideology, we've had Groundhog Day loops when it comes to how, like, the ancient Greeks came to terms with the divine attributes and incoherence in principle. What we can say about the principle of divine attributes and incoherence in principle is that when we twist the meaning of supernatural from not yet to have a natural explanation to meaning to have an explanation that goes beyond natural comprehension, it doesn't switch the category of knowledge from propositional to experiential, because all these churches just go into babble in more and more propositions, talk in tongues and try and, approximate speaking in propositions. Even those talking in tongues are like struggling to still cling to the use of propositions in speaking of God. So it therefore means for every attribute that tries to brand God as a character who has superhuman powers, extensive beyond the limits of humanity, not only obliterate humility and some of the more basic, evolutionarily blessed original attributes of ours, but they are irreconcilable. You can't have, for instance, all knowledge and all power in God without, and then save humans, and he gave humans the gift of free will. He didn't even give the DVD of free will 1 or 2, Volume 1 or Volume 2. He gave, like, he created the thought, the action, the emotion of the action, and the emotion of the thought, the awareness of the thought, for every thought, action, and interaction. And he created it all like winding up a toy train set or a clock, with no free will whatsoever. Free will could only be possible with God existing to the subtraction of infinite knowledge in God's mind, or God could never set a test and say, you prove to me if you can pass my test, because he's going to know the outcome of the test prior to having designed it. It's limited humans that wouldn't. So from God's point of view, it's complete setup now. So, that, and if that's your reach for affection, while you're afraid of being sent closer to your land rights surveyors, because you think it's hell, or the Earth's core directly, mantle or whatever, or a volcano's internals, then, are you begging to be set up and have it concealed threefold with and what about the Apocrypha? What I'd like about the Apocrypha is for it to be established into a book, and for there to be as picky, if not more, discriminatory interrogations about etymology and interpretation, as they've done with the canon, the canonical Gospels. Because so if we know that these kingdoms were inbreeding for bloodline purity, or believing in Adam and Eve's story, which is to believe in inbreeding as necessary, things like necessary for human creation, necessary to get the race started, necessary, some will say, even admit, necessary, though filthy, it had to happen, but then they'll have to admit that it couldn't. If it's part of God's plan, it has to be beautiful, beyond our comprehension. And like there's the doorway to the mind molding of a pedophile, right there. Because they can't account for why the species exists without thinking of kids fucking kids, as if precisely from within the same household of a single unit family of direct blood relations, one to the other. So, rather than evolution, which is this mind-blowing and ever modulating as it's refined model of stardust colliding with ponds where early primates were mating, gangbang tribes, tribalism. I love it. They made up African people. Their culture is beautiful, as with the Aborigines. Aboriginal culture is beautiful, and that sense of in tune with land. So they describe it early, and it's even said that the Greeks talk of evolution first observing and trying to describe in the most machine language around at the time, behavior and motion of animals, and just correlating patterns there to us humans. But the ancient Greek abolished the need for God belief, primarily by route of the positive divine attributes and incoherence principle. And then there's this historical chunk of the Dark Ages where essentially a Catholic charged force overtook, and the heresy hunts, witch trials. What does it tell you about the concept of heretic if Galileo, instead of saying that like a baby cradled in a manger, Earth at the center of all the universe and all that exists, there's planets in orbits, and he's calculating that, and he gets branded a heretic, dies centuries ago, and the Church of England decided to revoke these heresy charges somewhere between 1992 and 1995. It's like, well, great, like, what did Galileo say about it? Or was he in orbit, like orbiting a bit too much to make a formal comment? Has Rupert Murdoch got the real comment? What is it? Can someone fucking tell me? Oh, you dropped the charges after he died. Maybe the charge shouldn't have existed so long as we were born. And so then there's this comeback made by the nihilists. So they're called the nihilists, though. You'll find the Bible has a nihilist book called Ecclesiastes. It gets beyond nihilistic and into violence and time to kill and stuff like that. But it does address the baseline ideas of early nihilism, which is, life being inherently meaningless and nothing being new, nothing new under the sun. So, if you want to say that the Lord Jesus was sent to be a savior who was to fulfill the law and the prophets, which is to say the Torah or the Old Testament, you've got to say he had a thing to in him about nihilism, and therefore every unbeliever, oddly enough, it'd be better than the statistical pitch where you line yourself up and there's one bowling pin against 999 others on the question of which is the one true religion, and remain an unbeliever consistently, while being like a librarian, sort of archiving, examining these ideas. I'm not trying to say unbelief is never about censorship in regards to the awareness of faith through basic traditions. It's just that there's not a conformity to them, and there's that they'll do stupid things like blur the functional use of the word believe, so that it's like you'll go, well, do you mean to say, do I believe in the existence of like the Bible as a book, or like do I trust every single word in it that I haven't yet read with my livelihood? And they'll be, a Christian will be like, doesn't matter really, just praise the Lord. So to trust in and to comprehend the existence of is all mashed in the same word, believe. And this I see as is ripping off the idea of God into attempts to package it into propositional knowledge and then spam it as everywhere as much as possible. That energy. So why be born again? I love the Ali G segment where he goes to the pro-lifers. Bill Hicks makes an interesting point in his stand-up comedy. What about adopting a child with no family? when there's so many kids who adopt, why aren't pro-lifers more interested in promoting adoption than they are interested in doing things so personally intrusive as to pursue individual women going in and out of clinics and tell them, that if it was not bad enough that men are controlling women's reproductive rights, so it's women they don't even know trying to control their reproductive rights. And Ali is speaking with a minister. He says, like, "Your father, so is you so against abortion because you yourself has been aborted?" And he takes the question quite seriously. He goes, "No. And Ali goes on to say, "So what? Does you always use condoms? Always use fire and blanks?" And he's like, "This interview is over." But why would it occur to him to take that question seriously and think that someone with like a wannabe gangster accent didn't deserve any cynicism in the response to that question was because he actually thought there was coherency, this ludicrous doctrine of being born again, a second birth in Christ. So look, an antichrist is not against Jesus, the human. And it's interesting because you have then these really academic Episcopal bishops saying it was the humanity of Jesus that inspired all talk of his divinity. Antichrist does not approve of, the ransom money put out for his kidnap, abduction, his murder, suicide being concealed with 3 other fucking canonical gospels, and redescribed as a voluntary gesture on his behalf, just to be toilet paper to the monarchy of the time. Yeah, so it's twisted. It's twisted like what I think Genesis was, about. A king has taken whoever for his queen, but then built a family. And because of bloodline purity beliefs, he's marrying brother to sister, but giving them titles, prince and princess, whoever, or brother, a boy to his female cousin, prince and princess, whoever, later to be king and queen, whoever. And what they were left not to understand was why, on an instinctive or emotive level, romance and sex were to turn them off. So then they go out and perform mass executions on petty and ridiculous grounds. Now, so imagine a man that he's king. He was a prince with a princess. Now he's a king with a queen. He's in the royal chambers, the royal bedroom, and he's not able to enjoy his own blowjobs, and he can't work out why. So he's even, because he's blood related to the fact that he's blood related is dwarfed in his mind by the doctrine of proliferating doctrine of bloodline purity. So he gazes down as he's getting a blowy from his, either cousin or sibling or whoever. And he finds he's having to point his ribs out in order to obstruct the view of getting his dick sucked. It's too shameful a tale to instinctively disclose to a scribe. So he thinks of mocking 2 killbirds with fucking 1 missing rib and saying that a rib was removed to create the first woman, issuing millennia of sexism and blaming women for shit that they haven't caused. Anyway, that's my hour of babble, for which you see I prepared in notes. I've had all written on this wrist. Friskies. Frisks type of dog biscuits, you know that, pigs, who your Lord would tell to roll into mud, which backwards is dumb. But yeah, Jesus loves you, everyone else thinks you're a tosser.